Deborah Gonzalez, and I'm candidate for District Attorney for the Western Judicial Circuit. In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about my platform. A platform that as its basis has a very simple premise, and that is that the crimes that our current DA office is focusing on is really only half the story. Underlying it is the serious reality of violence, sexual violence, physical violence, gun violence. Violence that the people in our community are actually suffering from indirectly or directly, sometimes even during their childhoods and over into their teenage years and longer. And you know, what that means is that we now have a community filled with people who are actually suffering from trauma, and that it is that trauma that leads and becomes a driver for some of the violence and the crimes that we see happening in our community. And we know this not just from the stories that we hear in and outside of the courtroom, but also from the data that for the first time we actually have access to of the people who are in our criminal legal system, in our jails, and being placed in our juvenile court system. So basically what all of this is telling us is that right now the status quo that we have had for 48 years, it's not working. And that means that we need to make a change. So there are 4 pillars to my platform, each of them important, especially because of the times that we live in. Some of them may be familiar to you because I've already posted on Facebook about them. They're on my website. Others you might be hearing for the first time, or maybe they're positioned in slightly different language than what you're used to. But the 4 pillars begin with end mass incarceration, focus on serious crimes, ensure transparency and accountability, and develop and adopt new smart justice policies. What do all of these have in common? It's the simple idea that right now we have more data, more facts, and more options than we've ever had before in terms of holding people accountable. So we don't only have to use that one tool of incarceration in our toolbox. We can actually use many other different options. And in addition, it also recognizes the fact that we have new technologies that we haven't had before. So for example, when people talk about cold cases or going back and looking at DNA evidence, actually what I want to look at are old cases. And what I mean by that is very simply not only going back and looking at new evidence that we have to see if somebody needs to be held accountable and make them accountable, but also going back and looking at new evidence, including DNA, that says that, you know, in this particular scenario, we may have made a mistake or the evidence really wasn't there, and we have to go back and modify that sentence and let those people who should not be incarcerated not be there anymore. And that's why I say they're old cases that we have to review and not just cold cases that we have to review in that. So remember, when we're talking here, I don't want to just focus on cold cases. I want us to look at all the old cases as well. This new technology, these new options that we have, we can go back and look, and where people need to be held accountable, hold them accountable, and where people need to be let go out of incarceration to make sure that happens as well. Because at the end of the day, what do we want? Hold people accountable and keep our communities safe.